Welcome, fellow travelers through the labyrinth of history, to Alternatify. Today we embark on a journey not through the annals of what was, but into the tantalizing realm of what might have been. We stand at a precipice, gazing into an abyss of profound change, all stemming from a single pivotal what-if. Imagine a world where the most devastating conflict in human history, the Second World War, simply never happened. What if the architect of that global catastrophe, Adolf Hitler, had been removed from the stage before his grand, horrific design could fully unfold? The ripple effects, the butterfly effect, would be immeasurable, reshaping reality as we know it. Let us set our hypothetical premise. Hitler is removed from power in late 1939 or early 1940. This is before the full invasion of France, perhaps even before the full subjugation of Poland. The exact method matters less than the immediate consequence: chaos and disarray within the Nazi regime. Without Hitler's singular fanatical will, the carefully constructed edifice of the Third Reich would begin to crumble. A brutal power struggle would erupt among the top echelons: Göring, Himmler, Goebbels, and the Wehrmacht generals. Each would vie for control, their ambitions clashing in a vacuum of leadership. Crucially, without Hitler's iron grip and unwavering ideological fervor, the Nazi war machine would be significantly hampered. His unique blend of charisma, ruthlessness, and strategic audacity was the engine driving their expansionist aims. Without him, the momentum would falter. The regime's focus would likely shift inward, consumed by internal power struggles and the desperate need for consolidation. The invasion of Poland might be delayed, scaled back, or even abandoned entirely as factions fought for dominance. The immediate threat of a continent-wide war would recede. It is vital to acknowledge that Nazi ideology would persist, a virulent poison in the heart of Germany. However, its capacity for widespread destruction and conquest would be drastically reduced. The world would still face a dangerous extremist Germany, but one far less capable of igniting a global conflagration. Consider the physical preservation of Europe's magnificent cities. London, Paris, Warsaw, Berlin. These iconic urban centers, scarred by bombs and battles in our timeline, would stand largely untouched. Their architectural heritage, their cultural treasures would remain intact, testaments to centuries of human endeavor. The avoided costs would be staggering, not just in terms of infrastructure, but in human lives and economic prosperity. Millions of souls would never be lost to the battlefield, the concentration camps, or the bombing raids. Europe's economic engine, instead of being shattered and rebuilt, could continue its natural evolution. The political landscape of the continent would be utterly transformed. The Soviet Union, without the existential threat of Nazi invasion, might find its expansionist ambitions curtailed. Communism, deprived of the fertile ground of post-war devastation and anti-fascist sentiment, could be significantly contained in Europe. The United States, without the urgent call to arms, would likely remain far more isolationist. The Cold War, as we know it, might never materialize, or it would take a vastly different, less confrontational form. The global superpower dynamic would be fundamentally altered. Decolonization, a defining feature of the mid-20th century, would proceed differently. The British and French empires, not exhausted by war, might maintain their colonial holdings longer, or the process of independence would be far more gradual and negotiated. The European Union, born from the ashes of war as a means to prevent future conflict, might never be conceived. Its impetus for integration would simply not exist. Perhaps the most profound and emotional impact would be on the Holocaust. While anti-Semitism was deeply ingrained in Nazi ideology, the systematic, industrial-scale extermination of 6 million Jews was driven by Hitler's fanatical vision and the war's chaotic cover. Without his direct command and the machinery of total war, the Holocaust would be significantly reduced in scale, or even entirely averted. This alone represents an unimaginable saving of human suffering. Our timeline saw World War II act as an unparalleled crucible of innovation. The atomic bomb, radar, jet engines, computing. These monumental advancements were accelerated by the urgent demands of total war. Without this catalyst, their development would undoubtedly follow a different trajectory. These advancements might be significantly delayed, or they could take entirely different paths. The Manhattan Project, for instance, might never have received the same level of funding and urgency without the race against a perceived Nazi atomic threat. Nuclear power might emerge much later, or through a more collaborative, less weaponized route. A potential positive shift could see resources, instead of being funneled into military research and development, directed towards civilian applications. Imagine the brightest minds of the era focusing on improving human life, rather than designing instruments of destruction. This could lead to earlier breakthroughs in medicine, with cures for diseases emerging decades sooner. Renewable energy technologies might have seen accelerated development, driven by a desire for sustainable progress rather than wartime necessity. The world could have embraced a greener, more sustainable future much earlier. The space race, instead of being a Cold War competition, could become a truly collaborative endeavor among nations. Imagine a shared international effort to explore the cosmos, pooling resources and knowledge for the benefit of all humanity. Computing, too, would evolve differently. Its initial development might be slower without the wartime need for code-breaking and ballistics calculations. However, its focus would be purely on civilian applications, leading to different types of hardware and software, perhaps more geared towards communication and information sharing from the outset. The global balance of power would be fundamentally altered. The United States would remain a major force, certainly, but its global influence would be less pronounced without its role as the arsenal of democracy and post-war hegemon. Its isolationist tendencies might persist for much longer. The British Empire, not crippled by the financial and human cost of two world wars, would retain more influence on the global stage. The Soviet Union, without the ideological victory over fascism and the expansion into Eastern Europe, would be a less dominant, less threatening power. China's path would be dramatically altered. Without the Japanese invasion and the subsequent civil war exacerbated by WWII, the communist revolution might have been averted or taken a vastly different form. A nationalist China could have emerged, shaping the Asian century in unforeseen ways. The decolonization process across Africa, Asia, and the Middle East would have vastly different outcomes. Without the weakening of European powers and the rise of anti-colonial sentiment fueled by wartime rhetoric, the path to independence would be less violent, more protracted, or even entirely different for many nations. The global economy would experience a different growth pace and distribution of wealth. The immense destruction and trade disruptions of WWII would be avoided, leading to a more stable and perhaps more equitable global economic landscape. Resources would be invested, not rebuilt. The cultural landscape of the mid-20th century would also shift. The post-war trends of consumerism, the explosion of rock and roll, and the emergence of a distinct youth culture were all shaped by the unique circumstances of the 1950s and 60s. These phenomena might emerge differently or much later, in a world untouched by global conflict. Finally, global institutions like the United Nations, the World Bank, and the International Monetary Fund were direct responses to the failures and devastation of the world wars. Without that impetus, these crucial bodies might have been formed differently, or perhaps not at all, leaving a void in international governance. This thought experiment, while fascinating, forces us to confront profound moral and ethical complexities. The Holocaust, as discussed, might be reduced in scale or entirely averted. Yet this raises sensitive questions about the underlying anti-Semitism and hatred that existed. Would those prejudices simply find other outlets, or would the absence of total war prevent their most horrific manifestation? The development of the atomic bomb, potentially prevented or delayed, raises critical questions about scientific responsibility. Would humanity have been spared the existential dread of nuclear annihilation, or would the knowledge eventually emerge, perhaps in a less controlled, more dangerous manner? The genie of atomic power, once out, is difficult to put back. The rise of totalitarian regimes, a defining feature of the 20th century, could be prevented or altered in this alternative timeline. This highlights the fragility of democracy and the constant vigilance required to protect it. Would other forms of authoritarianism emerge, or would the world learn different lessons about the dangers of unchecked power? In this alternative reality, we envision a more peaceful and prosperous world, one spared the unimaginable suffering of the Second World War. Europe, instead of being united by the scars of conflict, might be bound by shared prosperity and a common vision for the future. Its cities would stand as monuments to enduring culture, not resilience in the face of destruction. Scientific progress would be overwhelmingly focused on improving the human condition, on extending life, and on understanding our universe. Imagine medical breakthroughs arriving decades earlier, or sustainable energy solutions becoming commonplace by the mid-20th century. Greater international cooperation and understanding could flourish, unburdened by the ideological divisions of the Cold War. Nations might collaborate on global challenges, from disease to climate change, with a shared sense of purpose. Decolonized nations, instead of emerging from violent struggles into Cold War proxy battles, might achieve independence through more stable and prosperous transitions. Their development paths could be more organic, less influenced by external powers. The global economy could be more equitable, with wealth distributed more broadly due to avoided destruction and sustained trade. Innovation would drive growth, not recovery. Of course, no world is perfect. Challenges and injustices would still exist. Human nature, with its flaws and complexities, would remain, but the scale of suffering, the sheer magnitude of loss and devastation, would be dramatically reduced. This alternative future offers a glimpse of humanity's potential, unburdened by its darkest chapter. This thought experiment, exploring a world without World War II, is a profound reminder of the delicate balance of history. A single life, a single decision, can send ripples across centuries, altering the very fabric of reality. It forces us to appreciate the peace we have and to understand the immense cost of the conflicts we avoided. What are your thoughts on this alternative timeline? Do you believe such a world would truly be more peaceful, or would new conflicts inevitably arise? Share your insights in the comments below. If this journey through alternative history has captivated your imagination, please like this video, share it with fellow speculative thinkers, and subscribe to Alternatify for more explorations into the roads not taken. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss our next dive into the depths of what if. And as always, let us know what other historical turning points you'd like us to explore.